affordable and accessible housing production. A. Appropriation. In addition to amounts otherwise made available, there is appropriated to the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, in this section referred to as the Secretary, for fiscal year 2022, out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated, 1. $34,770,000,000 for activities and assistance for the Home Investment Partnerships Program, in this section referred to as the Home Program, as authorized under Title II of the Cranston-Gonzalez National Affordable Housing Act, 42 U.S.C. 12721 et seq. In this section referred to as NAHA, 2. $36,770,000,000 for activities and assistance for the Home Investment Partnerships Program, as authorized under Title II of NAHA, subject to the terms and conditions in paragraphs 1 and 2 of subsection B. 3. $100 million to make new awards or increase prior awards to existing technical assistance providers, except that increases to prior awards do not exceed 10% of the amount made available under this subparagraph, to provide an increase in capacity building and technical assistance available to any grantees implementing activities or projects consistent with this section, except that the Secretary may use not more than 10% of the amount made available under this paragraph to increase prior awards to existing technical assistance providers to provide an immediate increase in capacity building and technical assistance. And 4. $360 million for the costs to the Secretary of administering and overseeing the implementation of this section and the Home and Housing Trust Fund programs generally, including information technology, financial reporting, research and evaluations, other cross-program costs in support of programs administered by the Secretary in this title, and other costs. The Secretary may transfer and merge amounts appropriated under this paragraph to Section 40301. Amounts appropriated by this section shall remain available until September 30, 2031. B. Terms and condition. 1. Formula. The Secretary shall allocate amounts made available under subsection A. 2. Pursuant to the formula specified in Section 1338, c. 3, of the Federal Housing Enterprises Financial Safety and Soundness Act of 1992, 12 U.S.C. 4568, c. 3, to grantees that received Housing Trust Fund allocations pursuant to that same formula in fiscal year 2021 and shall make such allocations within 60 days of the date of the enactment of this Act. 2. Eligible activities, other than as provided in paragraph 5 of this subsection, funds made available under subsection A. 2. may only be used for eligible activities described in subparagraphs A through B, I of Section 1338, c. 7 of the Federal Housing Enterprises Financial Safety and Soundness Act of 1992, 12 U.S.C. 4568, c. 7. Except that not more than 10% of funds made available may be used for activities under such subparagraph B, I. 3. Funding restrictions. The commitment requirements in Section 218, G, 42 U.S.C. 12748, G, of NAHA, the matching requirements in Section 220, 42 U.S.C. 12750, of NAHA, and the set-aside for housing developed, sponsored, or owned by community housing development organizations required in Section 231 of NAHA, 42 U.S.C. 12771, shall not apply for amounts made available under this section. 4. Reallocation for funds provided under paragraphs 1 and 2 of subsection A. The Secretary may recapture certain amounts remaining available to a grantee under this section or amounts declined by a grantee, and reallocate such amounts to other grantees under that paragraph to ensure fund expenditure, geographic diversity, and availability of funding to communities within the state from which the funds have been recaptured. 5. Administration, notwithstanding subsections C and D 1 of Section 212 of NAHA, 42 U.S.C. 12742. Eligible grantees may use not more than 15% of their allocations under this section for administrative and planning costs. C. Waivers. The Secretary may waive or specify alternative requirements for any provision of NAHA, 42 U.S.C. 12701 et seq., or regulation for the administration of the amounts made available under this section other than requirements related to fair housing, non-discrimination, labor standards, and the environment, upon a finding that the waiver or alternative requirement is necessary to expedite or facilitate the use of amounts made available under this section. D. Implementation. The Secretary shall have authority to issue such regulations or other notices, guidance, forms, instructions, and publications as may be necessary or appropriate to carry out the programs, projects, or activities authorized under this section, including to ensure that such programs, projects, or activities are completed in a timely and effective manner. Sec. 4003. Housing Investment Fund. A. Establishment. There is established in the Treasury of the United States a fund to be known as the Housing Investment Fund, which shall be within the Community Development Financial Institutions Fund, in this section referred to as the CDFI Fund, to 1. Increase and preserve the affordability and quality of housing, 2. Increase the availability of affordable, accessible housing, 3. Improve the energy and water efficiency and resiliency of affordable housing, 4. Enhance economic opportunities for residents, by financing or supporting affordable housing located within proximity to public transportation, as defined in Section 5302 of Title 49, United States Code, or centers of employment and education, and critical community services. Five. Match the creation of housing supply to existing demand and projected demand growth in the area, to the benefit of existing residents and with attention to preventing displacement of residents, and 6. Further fair housing purposes addressing historic disinvestment, the concentration of poverty, and housing segregation on the basis of race, color, religion, natural origin, sex, disability, or familial status. B. Appropriation. In addition to amounts otherwise available, there is appropriated for fiscal year 2022, out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated, 1,960,040,000,000 to the Housing Investment Fund established by this section, and 2. $360 million for the costs to the CDFI Fund of administering and overseeing the implementation of this section, including information technology, financial reporting, research and evaluations, fair housing compliance, and other costs. Amounts appropriated by this section shall remain available until September 30, 2031. C. Expenditures from Fund. Amounts in the Housing Investment Fund shall be available to the CDFI Fund to make grants to increase investment in the development, preservation, rehabilitation, financing, or purchase of affordable housing primarily for low, very low, and extremely low-income families, and for homeowners with incomes up to 120% of the area median income. The CDFI Fund may impose such conditions as it deems necessary to achieve the program goals, including coordinating with the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development to housing achieve the purposes of subsection A. 6. D. Eligible grantees. A grant under this section may be made, pursuant to such requirements as the CDFI Fund shall establish for experience and success in carrying out the types of activities proposed under the application of the grantee, only to 1. A CDFI Fund certified community development financial institution, as such term is defined in Section 103 of the Regal Community Development and Regulatory Improvement Act of 1994, 12 U.S.C. 4702, that is not found to be out of compliance with the obligation to affirmatively further fair housing, as applicable, 2. A non-profit organization having as one of its principal purposes the creation, development, or preservation of affordable housing and that is not found to be out of compliance with the obligation to affirmatively further fair housing, as applicable, including a subsidiary of a public housing authority, or 3. A consortium comprised of certified community development financial institutions, eligible non-profit housing organizations, or a combination of both. E. Eligible uses. Grant amounts awarded from the Housing Investment Fund pursuant to this section may be used for the purposes described in subsection C, including for the following uses. 1. To provide loan loss reserves. 2. To capitalize an acquisition fund to acquire residential, industrial, or commercial property and land for the purpose of the preservation, development, or rehabilitation of affordable, accessible housing, including to support the creation, preservation, or rehabilitation of resident-owned manufactured housing communities. 3. To capitalize an affordable housing fund for development, preservation, rehabilitation, or financing of affordable housing and economic development activities, including community facilities, if part of a mixed-use project, or activities